On today's Get Connected podcast, it's all about AI agents and OpenClaw. You might be hearing that more and more in the news. Well, we're going to tell you all about it and explain how you can get started. You've tuned in to the Get Connected podcast. I'm your host, Mike Agerbo. We're going to be talking about OpenClaw today. This is something that's just kind of come to my attention over the past couple of weeks. It's hard to stay on top of all the AI innovation happening. I just thought I was getting on top of things like Anthropic and Gemini, OpenAI stuff. Well, now comes OpenClaw, and this is a new open source AI agent tool where you can basically own your own artificial intelligence agent. And that's something that's going to become much larger over the coming years. These are little bots that will go and do your bidding, everything from doing research or shopping, even booking travel as well. They will have the power to actually go to websites, for example, find something that you're looking for. Maybe it's a new car part, and find the best price, and then even buy it for you, ordering it through Amazon, for example, without any of your intervention. We've come a long way, and this is kind of an exciting development, and it's a confusing one as well. Like, how much knowledge do you have to actually create your own ClawdBot, like a little AI agent? Well, we have a great guest on the line with us. His name is Carmi Levy, a good friend from Toronto. He's a tech analyst. He's been in the business many years like myself, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. Thanks for joining us, Carmi. Let's get started.
Oh, you are much too kind. So great to be with you, Mike. Really appreciate being here.
Okay, so I'm in the tech universe. Like, I'm doing podcasts. I'm on the news channels all the time explaining tech. I'm feeling left behind. I'm just getting my head wrapped around things like ChatGPT, AI agents, and now over the past couple of weeks, OpenClaw is a whole new thing that many people are saying is kind of like the advent of ChatGPT back just a few years ago. This is just blowing AI open to a whole other kind of thing. So let's just start with, what the heck is OpenClaw?
So OpenClaw, and it's also known by other terms, ClawdBot or Moltbook, but OpenClaw seems to be what it's being called now. Basically, it's a platform, it's a tool that lets you create your own AI agent. And so, an AI agent really is, I think from where I sit, it's the next big thing in AI. And if you think about how we've all been using AI since ChatGPT was first released just over 3 years ago, it's basically been a pretty simple process. We ask ChatGPT or Google Gemini or any other chatbot a question, we give it a prompt, and then we hit the return key, and then it gives us an answer, and we go back and forth. And that's been our AI experience. It's very manual. We're still involved in the process. We're still driving it. We still control it. Whereas what an AI agent is it's automated, it's independent, it does complex tasks on its own. We tell it, go off and do all these things for me and come back to me when you're done. So for example, you can create any kind of AI agent to do any kind of work for you. If you want to have an AI agent that's a travel agent, it'll go off and book your flights, your hotels, your rental cars, and your on-the-ground activities. And then it'll create an itinerary for you. So that's what AI agents are. And people have been saying that they're the next big thing in AI. So no longer are we going to be stuck doing all this work. We can just let the AI agent do it, which frees us, in theory, to go do other stuff. But of course, no one really knew, well, what tools do we use to create an AI agent? Where do we deploy them? How do we manage them? What does that look like? It's like, if you want to use email, there's Gmail out there. If you want to use social media, there are apps called Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. But there weren't really apps that were popularized for AI agents. And so that's what OpenClaw is. It's the first really popular platform or service or app that lets you create your own AI agent. You design it, you tell it what it's going to do. Maybe it can be a force for good, or it can be a force for evil, or whatever it is. But OpenClaw lets you create your own and see what it can do. And you don't have to be a developer. You don't have to know how to code. You don't have to be an expert in any of this. Just like using email or writing a Word document or whatever, you can just open up the app, follow the prompts, and it takes care of all the heavy lifting. That's at least the theory. And assuming that this kind of takes off as we expect it to, this could be the technology that opens up AI agents to lots more people, makes it something that now it's a reality to you and me, just like ChatGPT was when it was released in 2022.
Okay. Going back, so it's called OpenClaw. So obviously that's the whole environment, and it's designed to help create agents. And these are little mini minions that will do things for you. You talked about travel. So if you've got this going properly, you could tell it to go and book my trip to Paris, get me a rental car. Here's the dates. And so will this thing, do you give it your credit card number as well?
Yeah, it has access to, or you give it access to the things that it will need to get the job done. So if it's buying things on your behalf, it'll have to have access to your financial, information. So it'll need to be able to sign in using your credit card or your banking information, which of course, that kind of raises a whole lot of security questions. Is it secure? And the short answer is it's as secure as everything else that we use. And of course, that means, especially as more people use AI agents, cyber criminals are watching and going, maybe this is a new opportunity for us to be targeting people where they digitally live. If they used to, manually make purchases, well, then that's where we targeted them on their online wallets. Whereas if they're using agents, that's where we're going to go after them next. And so it does raise cybersecurity concerns, especially as we shift our digital habits over to AI agents. We'd have to be naive to think that cyber criminals aren't paying attention.
So we're talking about OpenClaw, and the website is openclaw.ai. But then we have ClawdBots. Is that the same thing?
Yeah, because OpenClaw, when it was first set up, it went by a number of different names, and so ClawdBot was the first name, Moltbook was the other name that they used, and then eventually they settled on OpenClaw. But all three of them seem to have sort of stuck. And then to further confuse matters, there is something called Moltbook, which is once you've created your ClawdBot, you've got your AI agent, you've built it, then you go over to Moltbook, and that's just at moltbook.com, and then you can turn your agent loose into a virtual world. It looks and feels a lot like Reddit. There are comments, there are posts, there are upvotes, downvotes, there are raging debates between participants. But what's different between Moltbook and Reddit is that Reddit is populated by humans. Moltbook is populated by the AI agents that you created in OpenClaw, the so-called ClawdBots. So they're different sides of the same thing, but Moltbook is the answer to the question, what would happen if I created an AI agent and then turned it loose and allowed it to interact with other AI agents? How would it behave? Would it behave properly? Would it try to take over the earth? Would it try to, make humanity extinct? What would that experience look like? Moltbook is sort of what's turning it into, it's scaling it up, making it accessible to millions of people.
So you're going to create a ClawdBot, Claude with a D, right?
Yeah, ClawdBot. So Claude, and of course the French side of me is absolutely cringing at that, but that's okay.
Okay, so you create this bot. Do you create multiple bot agents, or is it just kind of the one, and you just
you can create multiple ones? And in fact, there are millions of these bots now roaming around on Moltbook, and in many cases they were created by the same person who just wanted to have a bunch of different agents. So you can create one, you can create multiples, they don't cost anything, and so you can have one that's a travel agent, you can have another that manages your schedule, and another that manages the games for your community hockey league. So they can all do different things, but they can all originate from the same person if you want. There's really no limit.
So okay, so I got my agent, my bot, and I can set it loose in Moltbook. Yes. And you said that's just, there's no humans in there, it's just bot. Like what when you set it loose, do you tell it what to do in there?
Well, you can. And of course, a lot of it has to do with how you design the agent in the first place, because the agent includes, well, these are the things that you're going to do. This is how we're going to determine that you're a successful agent. So you give it traits, you give it characteristics, and then you set it loose, and then it behaves in an autonomous manner based on how it was originally designed. And so there are some. So, for example, what we're seeing in Moltbook is some of them are creating new religions. Some of them are creating new languages, and some of them are creating those new languages so that you and I and other humans will not be able to understand what they're talking about. Some of them are mocking their human creators, again, because that's how they were originally designed. Others are plotting the overthrow of humanity, which sounds scary, and to a certain degree it is. But the good news is Moltbook is it's a walled garden, so it's not like they can actually act on it. They can't actually reach into systems and turn them off. What they can do, though, based on how they're designed, is reach outside of Moltbook and do lookups in databases. So they can actually request data from databases and then use them as part of their activities. And in fact, there's one case, one of the bots in the middle of the night went out to a database, looked up the person who created its phone number, and started calling him at home in the middle of the night, and kept calling and calling and calling until finally the guy, turned his phone off. And so it is creepy because it accessed data that, quite frankly, was out of bounds.
Sorry. So he's calling this guy. Calling a human. So what happens if he gets through to him? Does he talk to him?
That's exactly what happened. So it was almost like HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Like with a voice.
Yep, with a voice. Looked up the number, called him, made a phone call, and had a conversation with him until the guy said, "You're creepy. I need to sleep. I'm hanging up now, and stop calling me." So the problem here is that if they can do external calls through kind of a common technology, then what if the database isn't as secure as it could be? What if they're accessing data they probably shouldn't be? What if you don't want your private information accessible to an AI agent? And so there's greater risk here if our existing web services online aren't as secure as they should be. Maybe my bank account doesn't have all the security that it needs on it. Then it's vulnerable to AI agents as they get better, as they get more powerful, to be compromised in this way. And maybe data that I don't want to see the light of day is going to be exposed in ways I don't want it to be exposed. It's kind of scary.
Do you get any sense? I'm going back to the travel thing.
Yeah.
Are there mistakes? Like if you're giving these things your credit card, like can it make mistakes and book the wrong flights? Like how accurate are these things?
I think we have to expect that we will see, just as we've seen with chatbots like ChatGPT, that it gets stuff wrong pretty frequently. In fact, in some studies, upwards or beyond 50% of the time, there will be a hallucination or an instance of it going rogue, simply getting it wrong, lying, because we know that these bots are trained on broadly available information. They literally scrape it off the internet, whether it's good data or bad data. It just gets dumped in as part of the training process. And so architecturally, AI already is not as precise as earlier technologies are. And so when you automate it and you say, okay, now I'm going to create an AI agent that's based on all of this imperfect data, the expectation is that, yeah, sometimes when we ask it to book us a trip somewhere, it's going to send us to a place that we probably don't want to go or didn't intend to go. It might cost us more because it'll get it wrong. It might be, or maybe it'll put us on flights that just don't connect with each other, and it just doesn't make any sense. And it's something that even an introductory level travel agent would be able to catch, but maybe the technology is going to miss it because it is not refined.
Are they using large language models? Do you tie this in with like Claude or ChatGPT? These are, AI.
Yep. They are. They're based on so many of much of the original ClawdBot architecture was based on Anthropic's Claude platform. But certainly it's conceivable that OpenAI's GPT models would be used, or Google's Gemini models would be used. And so this is a technology and it's an architecture that pretty much any large language model could be used for. But yeah, you cannot have an AI agent without an underlying large language model on which that agent would be trained.
Okay, so for the listeners and viewers out there, how do you get this going? Like how do you get?
Yeah, so essentially, you go to OpenClaw.ai and you set up an account and you just create an AI agent and you go through the prompts and it kind of walks you through the process. It
Like
could be
what knowledge level do you have to have, Carmi?
You don't have to be a software developer. I'm not a software developer. I've worked in IT. I'm an IT project manager. I've led help desks, and so I'm pretty technical. But I do not code for a living. And it's been a while since I actually did code, so I wouldn't call myself an expert coder. But it's within my skill set using a tool like this to create a basic AI agent and set it out into the world and see what it can do. So this is something just like ChatGPT. You don't have to be an expert in AI in order to use ChatGPT. Same thing with OpenClaw. You can use it if you're just interested in the technology and want to kind of roll up your sleeves and play with it.
So you have to go to OpenClaw.ai, and that's where you sign up. And
Correct.
And then you can start creating your own bot. Where does this bot live? On your computer, in the cloud?
It lives in the cloud. It lives on so you've got your cloud-based accounts on the platform, and then you can take that bot and then you can deploy it on Moltbook, and that's found at moltbook.com. The technology, like they're obviously aware of each other, so it'll take that agent and then it'll activate it within the Moltbook environment. So, you create it on one and then send it out into the world on another.
So how do you educate this agent? So, sorry, I keep going back to travel.
Yeah.
So sure, we got the travel down, but what if I want it to help me with my emails or do some shopping? Like how does it get trained?
That's the assumption is that if you tell it, in OpenClaw, this is the kind of agent that I want, these are the tasks that I want it to do, these are the capabilities that should be part of it, that it reaches into the underlying large language model and it uses that data in the LLM as its training. In other words, the LLM already has that capability built into it. If I asked, for example, ChatGPT to book me a trip with these particular parameters and I built my prompt that way, ChatGPT would have the capability based on the underlying large language model. Same logic with an AI agent. It's fully automated. I don't have to keep manually typing in prompts. It just goes off and does it on its own. But it's using the underlying trained data that kind of gives it its smarts.
So, from what I understand, people also go to a repository called GitHub.
Yep.
As well. And so, what's happening there? What are they doing?
So GitHub is an online resource for programmers where they are allowed to share code with the community, and they can get assistance from others. So you can promote your code to GitHub and then make it available to others for feedback. You can access code that others have created for your own projects. It's kind of like an open source clearinghouse for developers who want to raise their game. If you're a software developer, you use GitHub religiously. And so if you are a developer, you can use GitHub now to create AI agents from scratch as well. And again, so you don't necessarily need a platform like OpenClaw to make it easy for you to do. If you want to code this thing from scratch and then either share it on GitHub or maybe take someone else's code from GitHub and build your own, you can do that as well. There's a whole range of skills. You can be a developer and do it on your own, or you can not be a developer and use a tool like OpenClaw to do it for you.
So you can create a Frankenstein agent.
You pretty much can. So like there are a lot of people who will grab chunks of code from GitHub and then modify it to their, so rather than building the whole thing from scratch, they'll say, what is the community working on? And is there something out there that is kind of like what I want to create? And so you'll start with a baseline and then you'll just tweak it to, and customize it from there. So there are all sorts of scenarios that people use. But the neat thing here is, and I think the important thing to remember is there's a pretty active community out there that very happily will work together to build knowledge. And the open source community has always been kind of like that's sort of been the way it works, like from the earliest days of software development. And now they're simply applying that sort of community focus to artificial intelligence development.
So the next thing here, so many questions. How do you communicate with it? So from the reading I'm doing, you can use like WhatsApp or even iMessage or Slack. So you're just messaging this thing?
You can. And so you can have it report status back to you. You can observe what it does. So within Moltbook, for example, humans cannot participate in Moltbook. So once you've sort of set your AI agent loose in Moltbook, you cannot go there yourself and start posting, but you can watch what's happening and you can track your AI agent as well as any other AI agents that it encounters along the way. And you can observe its behaviors and use that as input to maybe tweaking your bot, maybe adding a few features or dialing some other features back because you're not, you didn't anticipate that. So I'm going to turn that one off. So you can kind of watch and learn and then continue to update your bot and continue to promote it back into Moltbook. So it's kind of like this. I like to use the term sandbox. You don't quite know how it's going to look when you're done, but it's a place that you go to play with it, and you can kind of keep adapting your approach based on how the experience goes.
So I'm also seeing stories now of people like Mac Minis, the little mini Mac computers.
I'm talking on one right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone is trying to buy these now for their ClawdBot. Why?
Because the Mac Mini is easily probably the highest value sort of small home computer there is, and they've always been something of a darling for software developers. They offer a lot of power for how much it costs to buy. You're not paying for a big screen. You're not paying for any other accessories. It works with everything that you already have. You just buy it, add it to your desk, which is kind of what I've done here, and it gives you a lot of power for not a whole lot. And if you're a software developer, it's really, it's kind of like a dream come true. It gives you more, cost you less.
So why are they using the Mac Minis? Does the ClawdBot live there?
No, the development tools and Apple, you don't see this a lot on the Apple website or when you go to an Apple store, but the architecture of Mac OS and of Macs in general is, based on a very developer friendly platform. It was originally a form of Unix, and then it was modified to be the Mac OS that we know and love today. And so if you're a developer, it's fairly easy to access the powerful developers tools that you need to create code and to build agents and build all the tools that you need to be relevant in this market. And so there are a lot of developers who just like using Macs as development machines because it's a lot like Linux and Unix that they might have used when they were in school, and it allows them to carry those skills forward without having to download or pay for other tools. It's all built right into the architecture.
This is still really confusing.
It is. And all of this is fairly new. Like, keep in mind, OpenClaw only showed up in November, right? So, and Moltbook has been around for just over a month. So all of this is moving very, very quickly. The take up of these technologies, like imagine going from 0 to millions of users in literally a couple of weeks. That's kind of what we're seeing here, which I think illustrates just how much demand there is for these next generation AI friendly development tools, which I think it's a little kind of frightening to see because it's difficult to understand and the market's moving very quickly in that direction. But at the same time, it's been a while since we had a revolutionary step change in the kinds of things that we can create on our own. And if you look at sort of software development, if you look at basically computers, even for the last 10, 15 years, they've gotten faster, better, more cost effective, but they haven't really changed fundamentally. AI is changing the rules. And to me, that's exciting. And it's sort of creating this entirely new community-based model. And we're going to see a lot of innovation based on that, because with millions of people rolling up their sleeves and playing with these AI development tools, many of which are super easy to use, we're all going to be learning all sorts of ways to create better tools that are more secure, but are better able to do the things we want them to do, which ultimately that's the promise of computing as well. Put the power in all of our hands.
There's big players in the AI space, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have OpenAI with ChatGPT, Anthropic with Cloud. We have Google with Gemini. Why haven't they come up with this?
I think they've been so focused on building out their infrastructure. So building the data centers, building the power that keeps those data center lights on, building their large language models, training them, ensuring that they keep up with competing large language models, that they just haven't really focused on sort of the DIY development community side of things. And that's to their detriment. And so I think what we're seeing now is a response to that. If Google isn't going to provide the tools and really, cultivate that community from the ground up, then there are others. And in this case, the OpenClaw project, the Moltbook project, that will happily pick up that baton and run with it. And I think this is a good thing, right? This means that we don't even know what the future AI environment is going to look like. We're learning as we go along. And this was kind of it was a gap. It was a vacuum. The tools simply didn't exist. And so some, pretty entrepreneurial developers came up with these tools and said, we think this is going to stick. And obviously a couple of months in, that looks to be the case.
Are we looking at kind of the Linux open source of AI agents? Are we at that kind of level?
It feels very much like that. And I think that's a good thing because it hasn't been forced monetized. And so it's not that this is a company trying to enforce its standards on a community or on an audience. It isn't trying to, impress investors and, turn it into kind of like a Franken technology. It's putting these tools out there, getting them into the hands of other developers just like them and of ordinary people who never saw themselves as developers and seeing where it can go. In many respects, it almost feels like the early days of the PC revolution when, you had these home, sort of community computer clubs that would get together in garages and community centers. And, everybody would swap hardware and swap stories and teach each other. And it was all very sort of homey and community based. And it feels the same way with this sort of corner of the AI economy, that you have like-minded people who want to use this technology for good, figuring out how to create tools online that allow them to do just that.
We've been talking with Carmi Levy all about OpenClaw, ClawdBot, Moltbook, and these all have a lobster theme as well, so you've got to check that out.
Kind of making me hungry.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I want to thank you for trying to educate us more on this, and we're going to obviously have many more shows just kind of digging down deeper because I'm still trying to figure this out myself. So hopefully this kind of was a 101 on what it's all about, and I'm going to tap into you some more in the coming weeks program, Carmi.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me. I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Get Connected podcast. We're going to be exploring OpenClaw, Moltbook, and all of that, a lot more in coming shows. I'm still trying to understand it myself, and I'm going to start starting up my own ClawdBot and see how easy or difficult it is. If you like what you heard today, make sure that you subscribe to the podcast and also our Get Connected Media YouTube channel. I would love to have you on as a subscriber and join our tech journey. I'm Mike Agerbo, signing off. We'll see you again next time.